water yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming.
I don't want to know it's coming.
I filled my generator already.
Oh, shoot. Man. No, he was in Thompson Road. He's probably got another couple minutes before he gets here. I think we should just go ahead and start. If that's just a suggestion.
You might talk to Garrett.
You know, I briefly talked to him last night. Like, briefly, but I didn't ask him. That's a minute, 2 minutes off.
Does it keep being timed, or has it just never been that?
I don't think it's ever been on. Well, it was supposed to be automatic.
No, anyway. It's 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the agenda? So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes for May 13th, 2025 regular meeting and public hearing. Any comments on these minutes?
I'm good. There's a couple little misspelling, but we're good, John. I make a motion we approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
I'll make the motion.
No, Rich already made the
Oh,
motion.
we did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I'll support it. Yeah.
Motion and support to approve the May 13th, 2025 regular meeting and public hearing minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. We'll move to call to the public. Hearing none, we'll move to old business. Item number 1, Michigan Medical Marijuana Act caregiver regulations. We've been working on this one for a while. We got some more direction from the board, and I will turn it over to Mario to give us an update.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, everyone. Before you is the latest versions we have of the zoning ordinance amendment, which you have seen previously, and the general law licensing ordinance, for lack of a better, or for a more accurate term. I do believe the board had a chance to look at the licensing ordinance, so they were generally in favor of everything. The licensing ordinance, because that was direction that you gave us at the last meeting to make sure that they had a chance to look at this before we went too much more into review and edits and everything. So with that in mind, I did, the versions in front of you tonight of the licensing ordinance do reflect comments you provided us at the last meeting. So the edits that are in front of you, where some text is proposed to be removed and other new language added, that's based on your direction about the licensing ordinance. And then in front of you, the zoning ordinance, I didn't have in my notes any other changes from our last discussion, so the zoning ordinance is as presented. And just for clarification, we included the red line version of how the existing ordinance will be changed, but also the clean version to show you how the new ordinance would read if it were to eventually make it as an adoption. So with that, I can take any questions you might have with regards to the approach or the edits that have been made, and if there are any additional edits you'd like to see in either version.
Mario, could you explain, so on page 4, number 4 that's crossed out, could you explain why that was removed?
We did have a question about whether we could prohibit caregivers from having employees.
Right.
And I did some research, and as far as I can tell, there isn't any official case law that has established it, but most people have the opinion that the intent of the original MMMA back in 2010 was to have this person, this caregiver, be that person that provides services to individuals, whether they're capable of providing it for the possibility of all 6 or not. It's not intended to be a commercial enterprise. That's the other key aspect, is that we have the MMFLA, which if people wanted to operate a commercial operation, provide a lot of people with medical marijuana, they could, but they have to do everything under MMFLA. If they want to do things under MMMA, the original, which is what this is trying to regulate, then they wouldn't have employees. So this was proposed to strike that. So it would just be the caregiver that would be the license. And then kind of similarly on page 5, under section 10, the transfer or misuse of the permit, we just added some additional language to specify it is that one caregiver that has a license, and that one caregiver cannot transmit that license to anyone else. It's just the one caregiver.
So in that section there, where the first item number 2 is 3 are partnership and a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So those could operate as a caregiver.
Well, I guess that's a good point about the partnership, because in theory that could be someone else. With the corporation, believe it or not, a lot of LLCs sometimes just have sole members. So in theory, they could set up an LLC and then operate as a sole member, and that one person is the one that could operate it. But maybe not the partnership.
Wouldn't have the license from the state, right? Just the person would, correct?
Just the person would, yeah.
We'll worry about if there's any way to get something by where it's a large corporation that sells this across the country, if they can buy a lot here for a relatively small amount of money from their perspective and operate it under that. I don't know, it just wouldn't think it would matter, but it could. And you drive somewhere in our state and there's billboards that say, choose caregiver over commercial, exit now.
Oh, really?
And it's like, well, if you're operating a caregiver operation for 5 patients, you're not spending money on a billboard, right? So there's something else happening there, right? So that's where my thought's going, right?
I would say that my proposed changes right there is the extent to which I'm comfortable with about the legalities of whether they could or couldn't be a corporation or a partnership. So maybe but I think it's a good question that we should have for the attorney. So when we have the attorney review the attorney could comment and see if those are even, because I just would, right now, I err on the side of caution and leave them in, just so the possibility of letting people have that option, with the intent that it's just one person. It's one person doing this. But if the attorney says, oh yeah, you can restrict it, just be explicitly say with one person, one individual, then we go with that. But I leave it up to the attorney to say how we can edit this and get a definitive answer to your question.
To the extent that it's like a builder's license, the individual is a license holder, but they can attach it to the company. And I don't know whether this is like that or not, but I'm on the same page. I mean, if we can prevent that, I'd rather prevent it.
No, yeah, if we could prevent it, that'd be nice, but I just don't know.
But, I guess if it was just one caregiver and they had a corporation, you know, and they followed all the rules, it wouldn't, but like, you're saying, well, are they really following the rules? I mean, we gotta,
Yeah.
you know, we can't control that.
I know, yeah,
You
so
know?
that's what I mean.
I mean, someone could just
I guess my question, John, to that is.
not serve their patients
we
and just sell it
leave-
on the street, but,
Yeah.
you know, we
You
can't,
can't
there's
follow.
a lot of things people can do that, you know, we can't control.
Yeah. Just another one in section F, the denial of license. The first one, you struck out substantial, but then in item 3, substantial is still in there.
Oh, okay, we'll get rid of that one then too.
And then it says the township building code. I would think that should state that township ordinance, just for accuracy.
Correct, yeah, oh yeah, good point, yes, thank you.
I got a question about, and maybe I missed it, going through this, about, cleanup. Let's say circumstantial things happen, and now that that operation is, you know, they just left, right? Is there, I mean, what do we do for cleanup on stuff like that?
Meaning like if they left plants behind or something like
Well,
that?
more than that, it's, you know, tanks, lights, plants.
Right,
You know,
right.
they're like a lot of different things, right? Like, is there any sort of like cleanup?
Or a bond we can put on?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with. Is there like a bond that we could put on that? Like, what are your thoughts, guys? Like, I'm just trying to, you know, I know that we did that with EI, where we put a bond on it. Now, I understand the reason for it. Now, the question is this worth that? I don't know the answer to that. What are your thoughts,
Somebody sells a
Ross?
home that has a car lift or something like that,
Yeah.
and it comes with a house, I mean, what's the difference? A structure comes
Yeah.
with pro equipment, they're either
Yeah,
gonna
that's true,
utilize it for a private grow, or they are going to sell it.
right,
I mean, it's just personal property at that rate.
Yeah.
okay,
We're not gonna make a rip insulation out of a structure, I wouldn't think, so.
okay, makes sense.
And I will say, I agree that we probably couldn't require them, but I will say just colloquially, every time I've ever been involved where a caregiver was caught, they come in and they rip out everything.
They rip out everything.
They take it all with them. They even take their condenser units. the 4 or 5 condensers that were in the back that led them to be caught, they come back the next day when they're caught and they take it all with them. They even rip down the lights and the wiring, the fake wiring, the illegal wiring they put in, they take it all.
Is there any need for like the requiring of like insurance? Like, can you think of a reason for that?
It's a good question. I believe, if anything related to the lighting and the wiring and that type of items, if it's related, because usually what happens for the caregivers is because they're drawing so much energy that they need to go, they come and get in theory, they get when they do it correctly, they would come and get an electrical permit to get a second service, because their single service isn't enough. And so I don't know if the building code or mechanical code or electrical would require them to get some type of higher level of insurance. I don't think so. I would defer to the building official and what their requirements would be, have that facility. From what when I've heard, it's kind of similar if someone has like a very large hot tub sometimes, or like if they have like a welder, or like a car charger even, sometimes the car charger, sometimes depending on how big your house is, you might need like another, to increase the size of your service into the facility, into the building. But I don't think that, as long as it's installed correctly, I don't believe that requires anything.
So like a meth
Specific.
lab, they sometimes come in and take the whole septic field out
Oh,
because of
Because of
contamination.
contamination.
So if they're running liquid fertilizer through all these plants, and
Where is
that's,
it gonna go?
and they dispose of it into the septic field, is that a liability for us to clean up later?
Right, so then that goes back to the bond, like that bond conversation. That's a really good point. I didn't think of that.
a good point. I will say that I've always been trying to, for all of these, both caregivers, but even medical marijuana facilities and adult use marijuana facilities, I'm always asking about stormwater and about water treatment. In some communities, we have been able to get them to install pre-treatment systems on site, mechanical systems, some kind of separator or something before they dump into a sewer line. But surprisingly, sometimes, well, depending on the community, they're not as concerned about that. So when it comes to typical situation in a septic field, if it fails, then they have to install the new one. But I don't know what happens when, like, if a septic field have some type of contamination. Do we have to deal with that ever, or?
I have not
Yeah.
heard of it or experienced it. I know meth labs in the area that I'm
Right,
aware
yeah.
of that.
Required testing.
True.
That's gonna be something we would likely need to
Man.
contact the health department.
Didn't we, I could have sworn I saw something about testing in here. Maybe I'm thinking somewhere else.
There's a wastewater section.
Is that?
That might be what you're.
That's what I was trying to
Yeah, maybe
find.
that's
It's like,
what I
I
was
thought I
thinking,
put
yeah.
The
something.
Page
wastewater,
three.
says for public, and it says to minimize
Yeah, that's
the
it.
amount of pesticides, fertilizers, nutrients, marijuana, and other potential contaminants discharged
Right.
into the public wastewater or storm sewer system.
So that could be modified to address the septic issue.
You could broaden it, so it's not
Yeah.
limited to public.
Most of our areas are,
Septic.
Yeah.
well, for the areas that were requiring this.
Oh, you're saying because
mean-
it's a commercial lot?
Well,
Where it's required.
we're designated for zoning, not per area, so someone could change the zoning where there's not sewer, but either way,
There's not sewer.
it should apply to public and private, I would think, but, I mean, if you damage your own septic system,
Well, if you're renting the building though,
If they're doing, say if they're doing sewer, we should.
I don't know. Or if they walk away, you know, they buy it on a land contract and they walk away from it, and the township ends up with it like one of these buildings. And then are we required to clean it up properly? It's just, I'm just saying it could happen. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth putting it in there or.
At a minimum, I would like to put into the zoning ordinance, in paragraph G, to also reference septic and private systems. Because I feel that that language should be enough of a catch-all, so when someone does come in, if someone comes in to do this, they're gonna have to go in front of council and you guys to review this. So at that point in time, we can review it, and then based on what they're proposing, make sure that whatever their proposed setup will consider that eventuality. So I think at a minimum, I'd like to include that in the zoning ordinance. And then I guess we can see if it's going to be necessary to get very specific, but I think because we're all, as I mentioned, I've tried to find a very specific solution to this in the past, and I really haven't found one. And when that pre-treatment system is the most detail I've ever gotten into it. So I get the feeling we'd be seeing, we'd be applying that same standard to anyone that comes in, and then see what their answer is to that. Because a lot of times, sometimes these people will be like, oh no, it's completely green, or it's completely organic, or that sort of thing. Sometimes they'll do that.
Is there a way, like, similar to other applications, like if it's a storage, where we say, hey, what chemicals are you gonna be using or storing?
Yeah.
Can we require that as part of it?
Actually, that is something that all commercial facilities have to provide. They have to provide a detailed chemical list of everything on site.
Yeah, but I don't know if we don't state it, then
Is there a,
Well, we can put that into the paragraph right
it would
here.
make sense.
Yeah,
That way
yeah.
they know up front what
Right.
we're gonna
Right.
expect of
Because
them.
then you can deny it based on whatever,
Yeah.
if there's a reason,
Right.
then you don't approve it.
Right.
We provide the reason.
No, that's a good way to do it, actually, I think. Well, we can require that chemical list, and then if they are saying, oh, we're all organic, well, you still gotta provide us the chemicals, because they
Right.
go to these facilities and they buy them, so they can provide us detailed,
and if we don't like that, if we don't like it, you know, a certain chemical or whatever, what's the reason, I guess is what I'm trying to get to, what's the reason for that list of chemicals? Like, I mean,
Well, you would be able to determine, like, okay, you
Right.
could search it, they could provide that MSDS on it, and you say,
Right.
hey, well,
right,
this thing can't be discharged into the soil.
exactly.
Okay.
And then
Oh, I
you
see.
would know
Right,
right
yeah.
away,
Okay.
hey,
They'd
we
have
gotta
to-
do something different.
Right, because we wouldn't be creating the standard, we'd just be saying, all right, if you're using this,
We'd just be-
then you have to
Yeah.
abide by whatever the proper disposal system is for that
Set
particular
standard.
time.
Okay. Yeah,
And
that
if
makes
it's,
sense.
if it's talking about, do not use the septic systems, and they're having a septic, then we know. So,
Well,
yeah,
what about if we limit this to only sewers? The waste treatment plant would test, occasionally they take samples of everything flowing through there. If something shows up in there, they're gonna track it down.
yeah.
They do that?
Yeah.
interesting.
They test it in Genesee County, like at the plant?
I
And then if they,
think all of them test it.
or like,
They do, they're all required to by state
Yeah.
law, right?
but if you
Isn't it
find
state?
something they don't like, then they start testing back down the line?
Right.
Oh, okay.
So like when I ran the garage, if I had a drain and oil was going in there, and they found oil down there, they're gonna track it back to me.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Restaurants in Greece, that's a big thing too. I know they track that as well, so.
So I don't know, the sewer might be a way out of that to.
Well, I think that'll be a very good way of enforcement. Excuse me, but I also believe this requirement of the submittal of chemicals will be a very good way of being preemptive and making
Yeah,
sure
we could-
that they're operating correctly, because we want to make sure they operate correctly. So as long as they're aware of it, if they haven't thought about this, then we'll know when they apply. But if someone walks in and they're like, all right, here's my chemical list, this is what I do with them, and this is why I use these, And we're like, and then one of their conditions of approval, because it's special use, is gonna be you have to operate in compliance with the manufacturer's requirements for proper disposal and treat of any chemicals utilized on the site. So, no, I like that.
One other thing that you brought up when we were talking about that is, what if they're renting this property, right? And so we say that property control of the site for a caregiver operation must be under the control through written lease, contract, or deed in favor of the primary caregiver. But it's not requiring to notify the owner. So don't you think the owner should be notified?
Well, the owner's signature is gonna be required on all applications.
Oh, they are?
Oh, yeah, yeah, the
Okay.
owner has to be a party to this application, yeah.
You mean
they-
the owner of the property?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because as with any
They
business,
can't
any
just show a lease,
operation.
say I'm leasing it.
Yeah, well, they'll have to have the owner's signature on it, and we'll verify it in as part of their submittal, and then with any business that comes into the township, the owner has to be aware of how their property is being used. And I'm sure the township verifies that, the owner is aware, they're party to the, application.
And then they can
For that
also
business.
have the opportunity to review the data sheets to see, here's what they're gonna be using in your house,
Right,
you know?
yep.
But I want to say where we're restricting this to be operated at is going to be all sewer, correct?
Well, we can't say that because
But it's close to, I mean, pretty much all
I would say
sewer.
it might be a lot of it, but we're restricted to a zoning district,
Yeah.
and we don't, I
So
mean,
if
they
something
could
gets rezoned, and it's not with the
you
city of
know.
the sewer, then,
M1, M2, most likely any properties that are gonna be rezoned to that would need to be located along the sewer system, but
Yeah.
B2, not necessarily.
Yes.
B2 could be, really anywhere that's a local business district, so there's a chance it could be either. Probably mostly sewer, though.
Right.
with this sort of, of ordinance, is there a way to, I know this sounds really strange, but instead of giving the use to the land, is there a way to give it to the individual?
That's what the licensing.
Is that what the license?
Yeah, that's what the
does?
license is
Okay.
for, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're right, makes
So the
sense.
special land use goes to the owner of the
Well,
property?
they would need they would need a combination of it, right? Like,
The owner of the property will need to sign off on the application. We need property owner's signature, letter of authorization if they're an agent acting on their behalf for any application.
yeah, that's what the licensing does.
Exactly, and that's the reason for both ordinances.
Yeah.
First is the ordinance to grant the use for the site, and then the applicant will have to go get a license, and every year,
Every
and to make sure they're in compliance with everything, and, you know.
man.
So something that I was thinking of, I like how specific this is, but I think it would be potentially useful to have something that's a little bit more general in there as well. Something along the lines of operated in a manner that will cause minimum impact on surrounding properties or something like that. The context I was thinking of was more security and, traffic, stuff like that. But I mean, that could sort of play into the discharge and the sewer, even the electrical too. So we don't want them shorting out electrical grids in neighborhoods or something like that. And so,
Let me see.
and it's probably somewhat covered by the fact that they gotta go through site plan approval, but
Right, like you would have your typical standards of approval criteria for site plan. Can't remember. So there's always those. I do typically like to have something in there that's like a generalized approval criteria, so that you can hang your hat on like that
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a generalized way. Let's see, information. Sorry, forgive me, I'm looking through the
What
ordinance just to
about
see
that
if. there's
section under the purpose, the zoning ordinance, A, purpose, in the last paragraph is further intended that nothing in this section be endangers others or causes a public nuisance or to, I guess that public nuisance is the one that I was.
And to me, that's a legal term, so.
Yeah.
I see that as a specific thing. I think you're probably right. All the things I just described probably would be a public nuisance. I just like the general catch-all, you know, in case somebody's doing something that's disruptive to the neighborhood. That way you've got something you can say, no, you don't get your license, so.
I'm in favor of your opinion.
Wonder in terms of the licensing. Permit, term for license. So, in the licensing ordinance, section 8, paragraph E, so that's on page 4, we talk about issuance of license, and then it says, the township board shall issue a license for a caregiver operation at a specified occurrence only upon satisfaction of the following requirements. Those are kind of specific. We could throw in a general criteria right there.
Yeah, I think
I
that's a
think
good
that would be a
spot
good
for it.
place, so that way the board has that.
I agree.
That generalized criteria approval. I like that.
The issuance license. Sorry, I'm trying to catch you there.
Summarize that requirement, Zach.
So basically, it would be a requirement that they be non-disruptive to the surrounding neighborhood. And could probably phrase that a number of different ways, but something that's more general that would give the township board the ability to deny a license where they're being disruptive.
Generation of nuisance factors, I would say,
Yeah.
consistent with our special land use standards, if we can include kind of the same or similar enough language.
But I like how specific it is, so I'm not intending to be critical. I like something that's a little bit more broad in there as well, because there's no way that this group, I mean, we can try for years and we're probably not gonna come up with all the possible contingencies that could happen with something like this.
Absolutely, no,
So-
I agree.
Yeah, that's good.
That's why typically you go the other way around. We start with the general and we get more specific, and this way we're just backing up to make sure we have that general criteria of approval to hang your hat on. And I'll try and find some other language that might be, I might throw a couple in there.
Great.
Any other comments?
Just one on the security and the regulatory ordinance, and I think it's section M. It says it shall be available for inspection during business hours, and I was just thinking if we would strike those words out, that it would be available for inspection. Right, so that way,
Normal operating hours or something like that?
well, just in general, right, because
The intent is probably, I mean, if it's super general, then that would give us the authority to go in the middle of the night, you know?
yeah,
I mean,
which could be the time when there's heavy nuisances reported, right?
Fair.
And so right here, you're restricting the township from following through on a complaint per se, right? And then, I don't know if it makes sense to add in local law enforcement. Obviously, they have to have their own set of clearances to go somewhere, but is that typically how it's done, Ross, or does somebody from the township go by themselves?
For these things, law enforcement is typically alongside.
So that's why I'm wondering if it should be included in there. That's what I would guess, but yeah.
You could say hours of operation too, instead of business hours.
No, I was just thinking that they need to be available for inspection
Right,
regardless.
at any time, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
Getting back to the, I was waiting for you guys to kind of slow.
Yep.
Getting back to that, special land use application, I know you got it licensed, but I know I discussed this with you in the past. I'd like to see us go to the special land use, only go to the applicant, not the property.
Yeah, that was kind of like what I
That's
was,
the licensing.
I know that's a license, but still, I think we should, we could still, to ask Mario, still run under the fact that just because he sells the property, he doesn't automatically get the special land use.
Get the special land use
I
for
mean,
it.
I think we should cover both bases.
Yeah, so when it comes to that issue, I do believe the township kind of has operated in that way, right? That it runs with the person?
For special land uses typically, yes.
Yeah, so I think just to be consistent, I think it's good that if that's the way we've already operated, then that's probably the way we can continue. Because there's the other school of thought that, like some other attorneys say, it runs with the land, it stays with it in perpetuity. But there are definitely other attorneys that feel like, and actually what we can do is make sure that any approval specifies that the conditions of approval shall be based on the applicant in front of us and those items submitted, and if any of those conditions change, and then that's why, it can be revoked. And that's typically the way that, and it's worked, I believe it's even worked in certain courts with case law that, like, yeah, the special land use goes away because the aspect that the township had the ability to review, that's gone away. So why should it run with the land if it's,
yeah, I mean, after a year, it goes away.
yeah.
Or wasn't it, wait, no,
Well,
no,
the
no, sorry,
license,
no,
the
the
license.
license, that's a license, that's a
I'm just worried
license.
about the land. I'm just worried about the land.
All special
Yeah.
land uses.
The next guy would just come in and go to the state and get approved and try to slide underneath, that's the federal guy.
Yeah, but we're not trying to change the requirements of the special land uses for the ordinance. I mean, because this is just one special land use. We have,
Well, that's what I want to see
you
in the
know,
future.
so we're staying consistent with that,
Yeah.
but now adding the licensing, so that would protect us from any operation, because you gotta have both.
All right, thanks.
And we did just add some language too to specify that the license itself it goes with the individual given. It cannot be transferred at all to any individual. So we'll have both the belt and the suspenders in this case.
So what would you guys think of a pollution insurance policy required?
Is there such a thing for it?
I don't know.
Well,
That's
I mean, like for gasoline, I have one,
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, so there's a
Yeah,
perfect example.
example. So
So
you're
the
required to?
chemicals that he's got on site, could we require a pollution policy?
Well, what if they say we're not even using chemicals?
Well,
I'm just saying, but could we trigger that after we get their data sheets? Or do we do that?
well, we could do it either way, you know, we
Yeah.
could require it, and then if they come in and say it's all organic, then we don't require it, I guess, you know. I don't know, but I just seem to think that we could put something in place that would protect the township if we end up with the property.
Or it polluted outside of their property,
Right,
to the,
neighbor,
or the stream?
right.
yeah. And even when it's organic, it'd still be pollution.
Yeah,
Right.
Like, yeah, that's,
Well,
I think
milk
it's-
is a contamination. believe it
It's
or not.
contamination, yeah.
If you roll a milk tanker over, it has to be cleaned up
Yep.
by DEQ, or it's considered a fine. I mean, that's a perfect example.
So what triggers yours to have a insurance policy?
I have above and beyond in case I had a catastrophe.
And you elect to do that, or is it required?
I elected to do that. Because, I don't know if you remember in 2001 when a tornado hit, I had a storage tank of waste oil tip over, and it cost me a lot of money with Young's Environmental. And I had to fight my insurance company to get partial payment. So I went above and beyond for the next time and got this pollution coverage in case of a catastrophe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that's actually a good thing.
How would that come into play? Would it be something in there where we say that they're required to submit their material, what do you call those materials?
It's part of the license, just make it as part of the license, like,
It's a
Each
data
year.
sheet or
But
something.
when they submit the list of potential chemicals or something, then if we see something that could cause pollution, then we're gonna require this.
I like that.
And I'm not trying to make this easy on someone, but, you could, someone really could just be out there growing plants and putting water in and not doing any, and then they're required to have a pollution policy. But to me, that doesn't kick in until.
If they're just putting water on it, they're not gonna be very profitable.
I know, but I'm just saying,
what, what if they just, feed us a big line of crap and just say, hey, you know what?
we don't have,
We don't have any of this stuff, what are you talking
Well,
about?
that's when
But
Yeah.
then when you audit, like.
Yeah,
what happens if
inspection.
someone,
You would be able
what
to
happens if
revoke
someone
their
just
license.
grows in their house and doesn't have this?
well, it's going in your septic or
So, I
something.
mean,
Yeah, it's,
I'm just saying, there's,
But this is large scale,
well,
Right.
or a larger
5
scale.
patients,
Just-
72 plants. Or is it 6 patients?
6 patients.
I think it's 5.
Is it,
5
5
patients
plus
plus
yourself.
is it
themselves.
5? Yeah, 5, you're right,
Plus yourself.
yeah,
You
right,
can-
so
You can have
6.
72. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how to get that in there. Maybe Zach or Mario has an idea.
I was thinking in sort of a broad way, something along the lines of any bond or insurance policy the board deems necessary to protect the township.
Yep.
Yeah, because you know what, that could come into play once you see the site plan.
Right.
We might have, they're gonna have this huge mega plan, you only get 72 plans, right? But this plan is gonna be a tree, they're gonna have 20 lights on one plan, or whatever.
It's Christmas tree.
And, we'll tell based on their site plan, their special land use statement, how big of this operation is, and then could rely on that general language to say, now we wanna have this one, we want to,
Right.
Yeah, just so it's in there.
yeah.
I would think the best place to put that would be within the licensing ordinance.
Yeah.
So that way, at least a minimum, every year they come and renew it.
Yeah,
So that way, they have to provide a certificate every year with their application for renewal, submittal and then renewal that says, here's my license certificate, insurance certificate, and these are the policies I'm covered, $1 million, whatever. I can do some research and get the appropriate amount of coverage that they would be required to have.
What happens if they do like a mid-year chemical change? They're like, we don't feel like using these ones, they don't do as good. What about,
We do have language in here that does say if there's any change in the application, they need to let us know. I can double check to make sure that it's broad enough to include any condition. I think we talk about the people, but you're right, we should make sure that if any condition of their license operation changes, they have to make the township aware.
do you have another comment?
No, I was
Oh.
Kevin Storm. He looked at me and said,
yeah, that's
Oh,
Storm.
Storm.
I know,
It's coming,
I'm going out the window, Storm's coming.
I know, I hope everyone's safe.
Keep an eye out for that one.
Yep.
Any other comments? So, Ross or Mario, where do we stand on this? And I understand that the township board has renewed the moratorium. Is that correct, Ross?
Yeah, we're in good shape.
So, not quite under the gun on that, but, we still need to continue to make progress, and, just try to have a,
You did mention
Schedule and
attorney
see.
review, that's
Yeah.
another thing that we'll need to talk about, because if you want me to send that in prior to the public hearing, I need to know.
I think with this, I think with some of these things we talk about, I don't know, I think it's important.
Yeah.
No, I would feel better if the attorney would look at it.
Yeah,
And
I don't
also-
know how that works. Is that something where we wanna gather a list of questions, specific, and ask? Do we just want them to review it, or is it, or maybe have an attorney come to a meeting would be an option? I'm just throwing it out there.
Historically, we would just, for instances like this where there's legal questions, we would just send the draft ordinance over and they would review and comment.
So once you're at a stage where you're comfortable with the language, we could send it to them as well, and then have their comments come back, so that way we can see if
Okay.
it's substantial or not, and then, because then, in theory, if you're comfortable with the language, and then the attorney is, then you can have the public hearing. I mean, you could have the public hearing earlier if you'd like, just so that way you can see if there's any other substantial changes from the public you'd like to incorporate, but that's up to you. Might be better to
I was
have it in
thinking-
more of a polished fashion in front of you.
Yeah, I was thinking more on the other hand, not have something substantially
Different, 'cause then you'd
against the
have,
law that we wouldn't want to have in there and have that in front of
Right.
the hearing,
Oh,
Let's have-
that run, that's nice.
You gotta run, huh?
Oh, is that broken down motorhome? I thought it was I thought you were gonna start a campground here.
Somebody do this.
So what's the best way to move forward with the attorney review?
My suggestion would be, if you're happy with where we're at this time, once Mario makes those changes, he can send them over to me, I can forward to the attorney, and hopefully we can get their comments back prior to the next meeting.
All right, and then if you guys have specific questions, just
Send them to me.
send them to Ross.
Okay.
Copy the group if you can. He'll get those to Mario. Then Mario, you feel free to put any other questions you have in
Okay.
there, right?
Yep.
And then our attorney will review it, and then we can discuss those at the next meeting,
Yep.
and then we'll schedule the public hearing? Is that the plan, Ross?
Sounds like
We're
a
not
good
quite
plan.
ready to schedule. I think it'd be better to have it, all our work done,
Yeah.
If the public has some good comment, and then we think that needs attorney review, we can just send it to the board with a recommendation or whatever, we can figure that out then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or for this one, if we wanted to have the attorney at the public hearing, that's an option too. I mean, we have options.
Yeah, something to think about, if you guys think that's necessary, we could always
So,
ask for that.
one more thing, Ross, on the website, can you make sure whoever updates it, that they update it with the latest MMA moratorium extension date per resolution?
Sorry, Scott.
That's a pretty picture.
Resolution
Oh, it's standard.
250602.
Just
You
changes.
said it's which one, 20?
It is 250602 is a resolution.
Yep.
All right, it's supposed to have expired yesterday, I believe. And
Why is
then,
there
Yeah.
two of them on there? Oh,
well,
yeah.
one's extractive, and that one's just on the website too, and that expired yesterday.
Extractive.
Extractive.
When we adopted it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
At least update that part,
yep,
so make sure.
I'll bring that up.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right. Next item of old business, item number 2, accessory structure regulations. We don't have any documentation for this, but Ross, if you want to kick this one off.
Yep, so where we left off after the last meeting was, we were kind of trying to identify some of the various topics in the accessory structure standards to, see if we can make things a little bit easier on residents. One of those was ADUs. That's something that people have been asking about consistently for many years. We've sent surveys out. There was a I think there was a question of the master plan survey about it. And overwhelmingly, it's something that a lot of our residents are interested in, primarily as an alternative to nursing homes and that sort of thing. There's obviously potential concerns with, misuse of these type of detached ADUs, such as short-term rentals and whatnot. So I think where we want to go from here is to, see what these standards should look like, explore possibilities to mitigate potential, abuses or nuisance factors that could arise from these types of things. It's all up in the air right now, so we're kind of going to rely on the planning commission to see, minimum acreage, setbacks. Are we going to have screening? Are we going to have all of these things? It can be treated in a wide variety of different ways, and we just want to try to determine if we do want to do this for our community, what's the best way to do it. So at this time, we don't have sample ordinances to look at. I think that first we may want to just get a general framework and maybe start putting together a draft of our own. It's been many years, but similar to with what we did for the accessory structures on adjacent lots, the one for lake properties that have limited lot size and have to share 50% frontage. That's something that we tailored very specifically for our lakefront properties, because we had people that approached us and had a need for it. It's a reasonable request. How we treated that is, specific design standards, keep the lot maintained, landscaping, deed restrictions tying the sale of the properties together to, prevent the likelihood of someone just buying the accessory structure and, say, running a business out of it or trying to live out of it or whatever. So the goal, I think right now, is to try to work on that in a similar fashion. We got the gist of it. What it is they're looking for a detached accessory dwelling unit. So where is it appropriate?
How many inquiries have we had this year, Ross?
This year, I just got one 2 days ago.
For ADU?
For an ADU, yeah. But it's frequently. I don't have a specific number this year.
Do we get anything that's attached?
We do, but with attached, there are methods to do that, but it's more or less just an addition to a single family.
Yeah, you can.
It doesn't need to share, common floor area. It could have a separate entrance. There, already with our design standards, there's a way you could do that. A house with a walkout basement with a separate kitchen in itself could be an ADU.
Right.
So, yeah, this is specifically detached, say, an apartment-sized thing, in an accessory structure, or say, like a pool house type thing, or something like that. Pool house-sized structure, just for care of a relative or an adult child or something like that. That's mostly what people are looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, I know some townships have it where it has to be attached to the principal
Yes.
structure, and that's one way you mitigate a lot of nuisance.
Right, that was what I was
Because
thinking.
I know
like,
you
how do
can,
we?
in Heartland Township,
Yeah.
I don't know, I haven't read their ordinance all the way, but you do have these units in the yards, right? And then you have 2 cars next to it, a camper, because someone's living in there, and they have other stuff there, and then you have the other house with the barn and their stuff. So you can see this, how it transpires in real life, right? That
Yeah.
if it's a separate building.
Right.
And it might not cause any nuisance, but you can see it, right? You drive by and see it. It's just,
But that would be no different if,
someone did it without asking, right?
or if someone just has a pole barn and they park their motorhome
Yeah,
outside.
exactly.
And their boat
No, I'm not
outside.
saying that, I'm just saying.
And they built an addition and had their
Yeah.
in-laws live on there in their house.
But if you have it attached to the principal structure, then
Yeah.
you wouldn't have it like, hey, you have a driveway and then you have another driveway that's coming somewhere else to this accessory, right? Because if you have another unit, let's say, then the people, are they gonna
kind of
pour a whole
prevents,
driveway, or they're just gonna drive in the grass, right?
yeah, it prevents a lot of that.
Yeah,
those
it's
nuisance
just the
factors,
little
yeah.
things that come with it, right, that are only natural. If you have another building, you can
Well,
see
and then
it.
they're hearing the noise from that part, you know, so if it was a separate building and they're loud, the resident isn't even gonna hear them
Yeah.
versus the neighbor.
Yeah.
When it's attached, you're gonna be dealing with it, so you're not gonna wanna put up with it.
Exactly.
I think it's a bad idea to have a separate one, just because of that reason that you'll have rentals in the future.
I mean, what's the difference?
Unless it's restricted to prohibit that use. I mean,
Well-
if we require, as part of it, similar to the other thing, that there are deed restrictions that prohibit short-term rentals, you know, you are not to rent this detached ADU out for profit, then they're found in violation. We have something that's very enforceable.
How are you gonna prove it though? How are you gonna prove it though?
Just like anything else. If it's not generating a nuisance factor, we may not hear about it. We might
Yeah,
never
the
hear about it.
one great thing, if it's attached, then you don't have to rewrite and update and come up with new setbacks, building
Right.
envelopes. It's
Yeah.
all part of, hey, it's in whatever zoning district you're in, that's it, right?
Right, and the only reason that we're talking about it is because over the last, 7 or so years, that's what people have been asking for, is detached specific, whether it be finished floor area above their existing detached pole barn for their, you know, adult child, or whatnot.
So,
Or it be a standalone structure for an aging relative. But a lot of them, they see it as a freedom thing. You know, I mean, the elderly or children, I mean, both of those categories. And even for, you know, say parents. Gives them a little bit of space. That's just what I've heard, that's just what I'm relating. Those are just some of the things that
one minute, Scott. So, Rich, so just to be clear, we allow attached dwelling units, right? I mean, it's just like you said, it's an
Well,
addition.
yes.
Is there anything that doesn't allow another family to live in a
Not
portion of your
necessarily,
house?
no, a single family.
Are you required to not have exterior door, you know, you could,
Well, the way that we look at it, it can have a separate exterior door per our regulations, however, it does need to have some sort of shared finished living space. So it could just be a door that closed off.
okay. So you can't have it completely sealed off, that's the only difference.
Yeah, then it would be.
That's a county?
duplex or-
That's in our
That
ordinance?
is in our ordinance,
Okay.
yes. And I believe the county at that time would consider it a duplex as well, which would,
How many requests of accessory structures do we get for storage versus livable?
Well,
well, we get accessory structure applications like almost.
Storage is
yeah,
almost all the time.
Right. Well,
Most
that's,
of 'em-
well, I'm trying to weigh,
most
like,
of 'em
most
are-
of them are storage,
Yeah,
right?
yes, but-
Like, how many are
I would say
a
about
living space?
50% of the people that come in asking for storage want to have some finished area above.
Interesting.
Maybe not 50, but close to that number. I mean, there's a significant amount of people that would like to do that. There are a lot of people that have done some really nice things, really nice finished area in their pole barn, but it cannot be
dwelling.
a dwelling. They can't have sleeping quarters. They
Well,
can't
that's what I
have-
was gonna go with, like, how many is considered a dwelling at that point?
They need to have sleeping and cooking facilities.
Right.
They can have a restroom.
I was gonna say, yeah. How many of that, what percentage of that is dwelling based versus, again?
What, just the inquiries?
Yeah, just the inquiries.
If it's dwelling based, I mean, that brings it down to probably 10%, but that's still a pretty significant number of.
But if someone really truly needed it or didn't have another option, they would come in and ask for a variance, right, Ross?
You can't vary.
Or
variance.
or a special land use?
No,
It'd be a
Nothing.
use variance, and, I mean, we can't do that, and there's no special land use.
Yeah.
That's-
So their option is to add on to their own home?
Yeah, right now.
It's not right now it's not an option.
No, on their own home.
I know, but right now, having a
Yeah.
detached accessory.
No, not
dwelling,
detached, I'm just saying, right now,
Yeah.
you add on
you know,
and stays a
Have a shared door.
single-family residence.
As long as you can access it, then,
Doing this may allow us to regulate better as well, because the reality is, many of these may already exist. And if we have this in the books, then we have something where we can,
Well, and at least the site plan would come to the planning commission.
Right. What ends
Right
up
now,
happening-
is if someone wants to build, you know, an FR or RE, if they want to build their pole barn and have finished areas in it, that doesn't come to us.
They probably, well, most of the, if, I'm just making an assumption here, but if we say no to this, someone's gonna go, they're going to get their barn built, they're going to get the inspections, afterwards, they're gonna come in and they're gonna finish the space without pulling any permits, without any inspections, create a dwelling unit, and, you know, then it's a safety hazard.
Violation.
They're not going through the procedures, they're not getting things inspected, it's dangerous at that point. Or potentially could be. So, in terms of the ADU thing, I don't think we need to really beat it to death tonight, but I think we want to continue maybe, now that we have Mario here, kind of feed him some wants, some wishes, we can kind of, between myself and Mario.
Well, I think, for one, we gotta, before we get too far down this road, we gotta make a determination, preferably when the full planning commission's here, is if we wanna do this, you know? And I think that if includes, we're not crossing which, you know, what variables we wanna regulate yet. We can add in a bunch of that stuff
Yeah,
later,
we're still not-
but if someone's completely opposed to that, or, you know, then we might wanna,
So you're thinking we wait till we have a PC and have a vote on it?
no, I'm just saying that, you know, I don't.
thought to
We
make
should.
sure.
You know, it is a lot, and it's not something that I don't think everyone's in support of. I'm in support of it if we regulate it right, but, you know, there's things that have been brought up that, oh, yeah, what about that, you know, so.
Yeah, I think, I think it would be better to have it as its own separate ordinance, similar to like the MMA, right? That it's a whole separate ordinance, because
The regulatory tied in? Or-
I don't know, I'm not saying regulatory, Ross, I'm just saying separate from like your pole barn sizes and stuff, because it's a whole different use of
Yeah,
land.
the way that we have it for my closest example, which is the detached on adjacent,
Yeah.
across the street on lakes, that's within the supplemental district regulations, which is after all of the
After,
general
okay.
accessory structure standards for
Yeah.
various districts.
Okay.
So it would likely fit into the ordinance that same way, and then depending on how things go, I mean, it could potentially be a regulatory ordinance. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe licensing, maybe you do need to come in for an annual license, you know, just to verify, to sign something saying, I am not renting this out, who knows? I mean, they're.
No, my point there is like, it's a complex issue, it's
Yeah.
not simple, but what most people have a hard time with and are getting variances for are sizes of pole barns and locations of pole barns, not ADUs, right?
Yeah.
I get there's a lot of inquiries, but.
Because they can't.
They can't.
Yeah.
Because they can't ask, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no experience, just dimensional. So what I'm gathering is in terms of ADUs, we do wanna kind of still think about it, we're not really ready to pull
No,
the trigger.
I think we could start drafting things up, because that's where we're gonna add our ideas and how to control it, but, you know,
Yeah.
But the one ultimate, like a larger high-level question I have is if you keep it the way we have it, where it's not a permitted use, does that help maintain our community as less populated, right, and more rural? That's, you know, it's a bigger
People that buy
question.
the large lots that wanna have these things.
Yeah, understood.
What I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
the other
yeah.
day was like a 15-acre lot that's kind of an L shape and would be way off the road, and it would be for immediate family, I mean, that's.
So I guess that's a good thing, we could think about districts and
Districts,
lot sizes.
Lot sizes for sure.
Okay, yeah.
And one other aspect to keep in mind, well, you guys are basically struggling with the questions in every other community when they hear about this. And I'll be honest, it's a lot of my other communities that are more dense have more issues with the noise and the operations. They don't, it's interesting to hear it from your perspective because of the fact of the large lots and then all the other aspects related to that. But the one thing I'll say is, these are all good questions in terms of regulations, and I think we've found some solutions with the medical marijuana, so maybe that's another route we might have to go down in terms of this. But there might be other tools, because Ross had some good ideas about other ways to regulate this, in terms of minimizing some negative impacts, most importantly the rentals, but I just looked, for kicks, I just looked on Airbnb. I saw one place in the township that's available, because they called it Fenton. But it was a house I could tell it's in the township. We only have one. So it's not like we have a bunch of these right now, at least 2 weekends from now. But,
We don't have an ordinance prohibiting Airbnb in general for
Right.
a single-family home, so.
so that's another way to tie that in too, is like we deal with that issue in general. But I would think, while we definitely want to deal with all those negative aspects, make sure it doesn't have it, you also might want to think about this, if you want to go down this route in terms of doing these, what would be the benefits, like for the township and for the residents? And I would say a lot of times it is current conditions. Where's the closest assisted living facility to township residents? Do they have to go to Brighton, or do they have? Maybe Fenton, or do they have to go to Flint?
Fenton, Linden.
6 mile radius, there's probably 6 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're surrounded by it.
If you live in Tyrone
But then,
Township,
yeah, then-
you gotta, besides you gotta, to get gas, you gotta drive 6 miles. To go to the grocery store, you gotta, so.
But also but more importantly, the cost, because a lot of these facilities are called pay-as-you-go. Not to delve into this, but like the cost for that is like very cost prohibitive for certain people. So it's just another, yet another topic to think about in your head. Is like, all right, what would be the benefits? And then also just, weighing that out. Or how much regulations do we have to put in, and what are the benefits that'll give it to us in terms of that? And maybe there's some other solution, because maybe if people want it, because it sounds like people are more concerned about that option. And all, then, in terms of also looking at rental rates in the area, like when you have those college-age kids that decide to come back, where can they go? Do they have to get an apartment in Flint or something, or do they have to?
Basement.
Yeah, basement. Yeah, which is definitely an option.
So while
Definitely
we're
an
on the
option, but-
subject of the Airbnb, did you see Traverse City?
I was gonna say Petoskey actually banned.
They banned it,
Yeah. Well, Petoskey, last time I checked, they didn't ban it. They
limited.
limited how many people could stay per room or something like that.
I will say that
No, that's fair regulation.
Yeah.
that topic, Airbnb
At least
is,
that was,
or short-term rentals, are always, that industry, not legislatures, what am I trying to say? They're always going to the state legislature, and they're always trying to get a new law passed. And every time it gets very close to them passing something, where the state would permit these or not, because these people go and they just constantly are attempting to get a state level law so they can have a blanket regulation over the state,
You can allow it anywhere.
to allow it, and to a certain degree. It always goes up and down. A lot of times the communities on the west side of the state are a little bit more loud about it, just because of the whole rental aspect over there, and like Dowagiac, that sort of thing. But it happens everywhere. But it's just another factor to consider, and it probably wouldn't hurt to at least have a more in-depth discussion about it.
tornado signs are going off.
Yeah, there's one to the west of this.
Yeah.
White Lake, or White Oak.
Okay.
So, do we think we're good on the ADUs for today?
Go ahead, Scott, real quick.
Well, I just wanted to say, the policing, we have so many things, we got this lawyer going on now. Who's gonna determine whether they're an in-law or not? Bill and I, we brought that up last week, and you guys talked about this. What are they gonna do, tear the house down, the in-law guys?
It would likely be a nuisance factor thing. If it's not bothering anybody, if we don't hear about it, and nobody knows, then.
I think you just open up the doors. But it's not to me.
I'm gonna move out to the garage if I get one.
Okay, so, at the last meeting, I was asked to get some general numbers in terms of applications for 2 separate aspects when it comes to accessory structures. One of them was, the planning commission review application for increase in size. So that's gonna be for your R1 and LK1, lower, or higher density zoning districts where we have a maximum square footage of 800 that they can come in and apply for a land use for. But we have the special procedures similar to a variance procedure to get that increased up to 1,200 square foot. Between 2021 and 2025, we had eight applications and all of them were approved.
That's a good figure there.
And if memory serves, I can't think of a single one since I've been here a little over 9 years that has ever been denied by the planning commission. That process, the way that it's written right now, it requires that they submit an application fee, they go through this process, it's a public hearing process, so there is a timeline with that and it drags out. So if someone wanted to build 1,200 square foot, say they have a 2-3 acre lot in R1 that would otherwise meet all of the yard location setback requirements, but sorry, it's only 800 unless you go through these hoops. And just in my experience, I think that it's something that we should look at, consider, still maintaining setbacks, yard location, lot coverage, that sort of thing. Is 1,200 a reasonable number in today's world, with all of the things that people own?
And what was that time frame for the 8 applications?
2021 to 25
Oh, okay.
so far. The other one that you wanted to get some numbers on were the ZBA applications for yard location for detached accessory structure, because that's a pretty common one too. Right, Rich? I mean,
Yeah, I think
see
we've
those
had
all the time.
at least 3 this year, maybe.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with, the way that people buy these big lots, they build their house way in the back. There's no real backyard, it's all front yard. We talk about rural character and things like this. We do allow for front yard accessory structures currently, but only on parcels that are 20 acres or more in area, and they need to have 366 feet minimum road frontage, and they need to be separated from the dwelling by at least 150 feet, I believe it is. Just some really kind of wonky regulations for that one, in my opinion. So my thoughts are, when we're looking at yard location, is are there appropriate zoning districts, specifically our lower density districts where it's not going to be that big of a deal if someone has an accessory structure in the front yard, likely still maintaining the minimum setbacks for the district. That's something that people ask about all the time. I mean, new builds too. I mean, we had a new build where somebody it's been a few years, but over on the center where, it's a common thing. A lot of examples, tons of them. We've had, between 2021 and 2025, 15 total applications. For that one, the ZBA, the criteria is dictated by the Zoning Enabling Act, so there's a lot of variables. 15 total applications, 12 of them were approved for yard location, 2 denied, 1 withdrawn. So overwhelmingly, those seem to get approved.
But is it worthwhile going through the process and looking at the application?
And I think for the ZBA, if the lot's smaller, it is because there's been a lot where it's contested or
Yeah.
there's site, but the recent one, it's at Fawcett and Runyon Lake. It's a new build. It's a corner lot, so for them to put their barn somewhere, it was going to be in a front yard because it's basically have 2 front yards. So if the lot size, I think, has a lot to do with it. Similar to that one we had here where the lot size was 5 acres.
It does.
Right, and it makes sense that you would be allowed to be bigger than 800 square feet. But
My opinion, I think that it should likely be a pretty substantial lot size, but I think 20 acres might be a bit much, seeing as there's very few, there's fewer and fewer 20-acre parcels each year. Everything's getting divided, it's getting a little bit smaller, but there's still a ton that are 5 to 10 acres, where they may have plenty of property, where they could, easily put something up that's going to still be 100 to 150 feet off the road. at which case, does anyone really care? And in terms of consistency with the master plan, rural character, at least historically for me, is agricultural buildings. Pole barns, typically you see those in front of the house. I mean, we're not a city here.
And just frame of reference, obviously, I know, once again, I'm bringing some aspects, bringing some from more of my urban clients, but I've got people with on an acre or less that are allowed 1,200 to 1,300 square foot in their accessory structure, provided the size of the house.
My understanding is the intent of putting in this special process similar to a variance was just to kind of see how it went. But obviously that was a different board, different planning commission. So that's what I've heard, was that this is kind of a trial period. It's been going on for many, many years and it gets approved every time. It's almost turned into a rubber stamp, but.
Almost, but there, every once in a while you might catch something and then it was worth it. And the applicant's paying for the meeting, right?
Well, yeah, the PC one, but that's the one where I can't recall a single.
The PC one is kind of different, but I don't know.
Yeah, and the PC one, it's like, to me, if your lot size is lower than a certain amount, then the same thing should still apply, where you come in and
Yeah,
ask for
the
increase.
properties that are less than an acre or two, I think it's still worth looking at it.
Yeah, and the only
Oh,
thing
yeah,
I can
absolutely, yeah.
recall, Ross, from, we approved it, but it was conditional that they remove their other building that they were
Yeah.
allowed to have, so it was.
Yeah,
Because if you,
sometimes
you could have
or you-
administratively said, hey, this is okay, and not caught that, hey, there's another building on the property that they didn't tell us about, right?
Or you know what, maybe.
We have to look at that,
Yeah.
because still, in these R1 and LK1, you're only permitted the one detached, aside from the incidental
Shed,
that's on
yeah,
the
Okay, I see.
Figure-
100 or less.
100 square foot is the.
Yeah, that's
That's
a,
allowed
jeez.
in addition to the,
No, I know, yeah, but I'm just saying 100, geez, at least 200 is for the building code, I
and
mean.
you know what ends up happening is we get outdoor storage violations, because people don't have. enough room.
Right, yeah, then they've got all their stuff in the
But there's
yard.
times when where the location you could have put it, you could move it over a little bit, because it had the PC application, the neighbors got notified, they come to the meeting, they got a concern.
Yeah.
And not saying it's not approved, but maybe they adjusted
Yeah.
to make it everyone happy, rather than just going to get the permit and building what they want.
It does sound like it's a good process for those kind of cases, but maybe looking at the size requirements.
Size requirements.
It's probably what
size
it
of
is, so
lot.
like turn that dial down a little bit, just because,
Yeah, what's
just
that
consider
right now,
it.
Ross? What's that size requirement? Like right now, R1, R2, LK, I'll require it, but what's those are all.
But what your minimum lot size is.
Well, I guess
Minimum lot size is half acre, and
Right, yeah.
LK1, and it's an acre in R1.
minimum, but I think,
But there is a lot of existing non-conforming too.
but I'm thinking of like the large parcels in those
Right.
that could just have it approved.
Lots 5 acres or
Recently,
greater.
It was like an 8 acre.
It was 8
R1
acres.
parcel.
So I'm thinking I don't know the cutoff, but
But you could
5
create,
acre, 3
right.
acre or
You
something.
guys create it, like anything 5
Yeah,
acre
so that's a
allowance
thought, it could be
permitted.
somewhere in the middle, but, so we're still gonna continue work on this, on this topic. Any other discussion on it? Okay, we'll move to, there's no new business. Move to, call to the public regarding any topic. Hearing none, miscellaneous business. Next planning commission meeting, Tuesday, July 8th. And I guess with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. All right. Maybe we can get out of here before the thunderstorm comes.
Yeah, it's close. I think we can
Pretty
make
close.
it. The tornado warning is gone.
What's going on? Should we hear that?
Yeah, you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good to do
I
that.
can hear it. Nice. See,
So
Bill.
at least one of the boards
Paul's,
one
Yeah.
officer there and then a subcommittee.
I won't be here
Yeah.
on July 18th.
Yeah, a good cross-section, we can hash it
Email
out.
us,
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
way we can just have
Yep.
remind
No, sounds good.
everyone to think about it.
yeah,
I think I will be,
Early next week. 'cause,
yeah.
but you know, it's right after the holiday.
Oh, he's out tomorrow? Okay. All right. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up those issues, because it does sound like we just gotta take a look at those a little bit harder.
I mean, we should have been looking at these years ago. Times change, people's needs change, I mean, society changes.
Right.
You know, when we see, one of our big problems is outdoor storage violations. Well, why is that? Oh, we don't allow them to build a barn.
Right. And 100 square foot, that's pretty small.
Yeah.
For just that extra stuff, extra.
Oh, yeah, it's like.
That's a little small, I mean, even 200, you don't need a building permit.
Right, I know, yeah.
Yeah,
And there's still all these things, they're subject to setbacks and lot coverage. So, I just.
it sounds like,